Okay, this is what they were hoping for, is signs of life on Mars. And they're looking at this little glob of stuff and saying, this looks similar to what we see when we see microbial life. Well, as I have shown over and over and over, you don't have to see microbial life. You can see actual physical body parts, but from giant creatures. But they are the same as here on Earth. They're everywhere. All right, I have shown this about Bennu so many times. This is asteroid Bennu. This is asteroid Psyche. They're both hearts, and that's what they look like as a heart, because the plumbing pops off because of the red and the blue iron oxides pop each other apart, and you end up with the looking right down into the valves. Now, this is muscle sarcomeres. And this is what they came back from Psyche with. You see these? They came back from Psyche with these, which are nothing more than these, which are heart sarcomeres from a heart attack victim. Same exact stuff. Phosphate layers, which are the phospholipid layers on top of each block. And Mars has the same stuff. All right, I've shown this so many times, it's just upsetting that I can't get anybody to listen, and now you're going to hear from NASA how they think this is so spectacular that they found this thing here that might indicate life. Now, I'm going to go back 10 years from when I started with this stuff, was with Curiosity. And I could see from the Curiosity pictures the Mars crab, the Mars Morse code, the Mars blueberries, the Mars muscle fibers. This is from Curiosity. Now, they say continually over many millions of years, all that. No. That is muscle sarcomeres, those blocks, and the red gooey stuff erodes out of it. And that's what they are right here. This is exactly what they are. And they are everywhere. It's not just here, not just there. They're all over Earth, too. All right, and this is from the Bennu, where they came back with it. Here's the sarcomeres. There's the phosphate layers. They went down, they grabbed a chunk of heart. So I've shown this over and over and over. Now, NASA is also tasked with trying to understand Bennu. And here's the heart valves from Bennu. You see that? There's one there, there's one here, there's a big one over here, and I think maybe one here. There's like 4 of them up on top. And this has got a lot of scruff on it, but this one doesn't, which is Psyche. You see that? It's got tubes coming out of it. You see the different colors of blood? These are the different valves, and a heart surgeon is going to know what this is. This is the tendon where it grabs in. These are the different colors of blood, and this thing's gigantic, 170 miles across. This is what they just, oh, it's just scary. Yes, it is. I'm not saying it isn't. Here's what they want: $11 billion to go pick up samples from Mars, and I'm showing you this is biology. That's muscle. It's the same stuff as here on Earth. Only this got hit by Venus and destroyed. And here's the impact site. This is wider than the United States. And this was, it sucked all the juice from this into Venus. That's a welding arc. So here's Mars. Actually, Venus came into Mars, I believe. Or vice, it doesn't matter. They came together. When that happened, what happened? The magnetic field and the energetic particles from Mars appear to have discharged. Its atmosphere, its magnetic ionosphere, all of those particles, its gases, virtually everything, right into Venus, and created a huge gouge. Now, I believe there's another spot here. I think these are 2 separate spots. And I can see because of the energy value coming off of here and coming off of here, I think, but I'm not sure. Anyway, we also got hit. I believe, these are my opinions, which hit in the Grand Canyon area and deposited uranium, actually. So anyway, all of this stuff supports the things I'm saying. The Mars crab, the Mars Morse code, the Mars blueberries, this gassing off in space, this hip bone, which is common 67P, there's nothing but biology. Now, either we live in a world of hiding from the truth. This goes back 10 years. And when I saw this, I said, you got an artery shooting out here, you got all of this stuff coming up here from the tendons, which also have a Slurpee on them, which is a moisture spot. They have to have it so they can slide back and forth, and there's a million tendons, and when I'm talking about a million, I'm not kidding. Because even when you look at them, let me show you this. These are the tendons. When you look at that, you say, "Ooh, it's one big block like that." No, it isn't. It's about 10,000 little fibers in here. However, they do form a block, and those blocks have to ride on each other, so there's moisture in between here, and that's what you see shooting up from this area down here. This is a bundle of muscle, and the red dust here is nothing more than blood, and these are the pinchy little bundles. Now, when I say little, these are not little. This thing is absolutely stunningly large, as is Psyche. They're from huge, huge, huge creatures. I can't account for that. So don't say, well, you can. Well, of course I can't. You can't either. But what we're looking at is here. This was landed on by the Philae lander. I followed this just as close as they did. They landed down there. They picked up a couple of samples, Kenneth and Julia. They sampled them. They looked at them. They did spectroscopy. They did chemical analysis. And it was all biology. It was all organic molecules. They admitted it. But what are they going to do about it? They couldn't do anything about it. And this is when it came into the sunlight. This is actually barbecue gases of blood. Now this, if they could test that, I can guarantee you, this is not going to be the same gas. This is blood which has all the metals and all kinds of stuff in blood. This is not blood. This is a synovial fluid. So I don't think it's got the metals. It's not, the metals are transition. Metals do this. Here, they call them transition metals. And they grab a hold of things as a core, and they drag them around your body and drop them here and drop them there. This is not the same kind of a fluid. This is a slurp. And this stuff is called synovial fluid in joints and in tendons. Same stuff. So, but if they chemically analysis of this would be different than this. That's my point. Okay, my friends, these are my opinions and based on my research. And this is about Bennu, Boulders and Beyond, National Science Foundation, Smithsonian, University of Arizona. They're all chiming in on this, and they're getting a ton of money, I am sure. And they want to, how can we better understand? Well, let's see about that. This is Bennu. Now, this mission goes a while back, and they brought back samples, Bennu samples, from the asteroid Bennu, and they contain all 5 of the nucleobases, 14 of the 20 amino acids used by life on Earth, which are essential components for DNA, RNA, and proteins. Everything that they have here points to the fact that it was a primordial body of some creature. And they say, oh, no. They maybe brought these little bits and pieces to Earth. But let me show you something that indicates the fact that it is biology. Well, let's see what we can determine. That is Bennu. All right. Now look at this circular structure here, this circular structure here, and this big circular structure here. Now, they landed on there, grabbed a chunk of that, and came back to Earth. Okay, the reason I'm upset is because I discovered mud fossils. I know exactly what this is. I reported it to Yale, and in my opinion, they altered my information, and NASA paid Yale because I went and contacted NASA, and I said, you guys got biology up there on Mars. I'll show you this in a second. And Yale was funded by the government, and they turned it around so it made it sound like it was just slimy little creatures that were here that got preserved in this manner, which is not true. I have all the evidence here that shows exactly what I'm saying is true. So, in my opinion, I see that as fraud and also plagiarism, because I had also given Derek Briggs all this information about the platypolar silicates, fascia-facilitated fossilization, long before NASA funded him, because I contacted NASA at the same time. This was like 2014, 2015. When Curiosity went up there, it's just loaded with biology. Same thing. So as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion, our institutions are working against us, and the university system is just pilfering us of cash. This costs way over $1 billion. And this is nothing more than muscle. That's muscle, my friends. And these are membranes that lay over the top of those muscles. And that's because Bennu is a heart. And you say, oh, it can't be a heart, it's just too big. No, it's not even big, actually. You see this? I am intimate with this. This is muscle sarcomeres. They pull in like this when you're using your muscle, and they relax there like that. This red stuff just comes out of it and decays out in watery conditions or in a dry condition, such as on Mars, and you end up with these little tiny, really heavy-duty connective tissues in between, because that's the stuff that makes your muscles strong. But this stuff is the red stuff is what makes it pull in. Let me show you. So I just showed you, this is the muscle sarcomere, so is this. And on top of each layer of sarcomeres, they have membranes, which is this, which is the phospholipid membranes. It breaks down into phosphates. Now, they found all the biology basically on Earth. I mean, that is on Earth and is in DNA and RNA. Now, listen, this again is muscle. Muscle. Guess where this is? That's on Mars. And they say this all happened continually millions and millions of years. No. These are muscle sarcomeres, and this is the red dusted off stuff. And there's no water here, so don't start with this nonsense that this is not on Mars. They went to Mars, there's no question about it. And this is the dust that came out, and these are the connective tissues. Those are sarcomeres, exactly as I just showed you, which are up on Bennu. Or actually, they're here now in the University of Arizona. It's been 2 years now, almost. I told them what they had before they even came back with it. I said, here's what you're going to find. I actually sent them a list of exactly what is in heart, blood, basically, because mostly they came back with a bloody heart. If that's not enough to convince you, I showed you this here. You got membranes right over the top of these muscle sarcomeres, and when you look at them in here, these are the ropes that wrap around the heart. They grabbed all this muscle and came back with it, and they just can't live with the fact that it is muscle. This is a heart attack victim, and this is heart muscle. And these are the phosphate layers that layer across these, because they have to pull in and out, but they also have to move like this and that. So that's what allows them to move, and these allow them to pull in. That's how a muscle works, and that is exactly what you have right here from Bennu. Now, this has been here for 2 years. I would assume at some teaching institution, and I had contacted them since day one, even before day one, and I will get no response. Dante Laurenta, I feel very upset about this, and of course I contacted the government fraud net, or whatever they call it. Yeah, fraud net, I think, because this is, in my opinion, this is just totally fraud. All they're looking for is money from us to walk around in circles. That's my opinion. And you say, oh, this is too big. No, it isn't. This is another heart. And that's psyche. They didn't come back with any of that, but this here has tubes coming out of it. And it's got all the colors of the blood. It's got the tendon investment that wraps into the muscle so that it can do this. These are the valves. It's not hard to understand. It's totally, if they can't figure this out, they don't have any right to be in this business. And as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion, this is the only alternative here is fraud. I can't see this as, oh, we just didn't understand, oh, we just didn't know. They refuse to engage, and the reason is because they're going to lose their funding and their status. We've been misled forever, and it's time to stop this nonsense. That's a heart. And only because it pops off here. And I found out through my research that it's iron banding, which means there's the red and the black blood, which is red and blue until it turns black as it oxidizes. It just pops right off. That top pops off. They know about this in autopsy people. I've talked to all kinds of people about this, and everybody says the same thing. You're right, don't use my name. Because they know they will be assaulted. And that's because the things on this earth are so enormous that nobody can deal with them. If that's a heart, that's 177 miles across. This is little, this is under a mile, the Bennu, but Psyche is the same thing, only it's much bigger. And Mars, as Velikovsky recorded, this Mars Marianas Trench is because it got hit by Venus, and it knocked it out of its orbit, destroyed, and it sucked all of the magnetism and electricity out of Mars. And here's where Venus is. These are welding scars of electrical discharge into Venus from that impact. Venus spins backwards. All the other ones spin in the opposite direction. And Venus was, as Velikovsky reported, ejected from Jupiter. All right, and then it went through the solar system. It hit us, actually, and created the Grand Canyon and all the uranium mines and so forth out there because of the impact of all the energy. The energy just gushed into the earth, and now it is decaying. These are my opinions, my conclusions. This is the Mars crab. And all this stuff, I reported to him. I said, that's not a crab. I said, that's an artery. And that artery is supplying these muscle sarcomeres. There it is. I mean, I have the same stuff in my shop. I studied this. I was the first one. And I reported all this stuff to Derek Briggs at Yale. And in my opinion, he converted it so that, and he took money from NASA. Because I got a hold of NASA too. They paid him to mislead everybody. That's my opinion. And he did. He misled everybody. And I have all the emails. I have dozens of emails. I had the DNA tests, the CAT scans done. I had everything done. And refusal to engage in that is a fiduciary failure to his students. He should have engaged. He would not allow me to show him the stuff. He said he saw it all as just rocks, and the last email I got from him was, why don't you go find a geologist? That's the kind of people we're dealing with. You see, this is 2018. 2015, I discovered this fluid-filled highway. And they say it's a newfound organ. They never even knew it existed. And that is our immune system. The doctors don't even know how this works. The only reason this works so well is because of bacteria and enzymes do biology and the breakdown of things millions of years faster than it would happen if you didn't have the enzyme. And the only way you get the enzymes is to have the bacteria. All of this stuff plays into one big giant thing that they have kept us from understanding. Even like this. This was that interstitium. These are all these balls and these straps. This is pinched skin. Guess where this is? On Mars. Because it just dusted off. We live on gigantic dead creatures. And you see those balls and those straps? Where are they? Got them here somewhere. Hold on. Here it is right here. These are the straps. and these little ones are the balls. When it erodes, this is fleshy stuff, erodes easy. The skin smacks down, and these are all the balls. Eventually, you see them laying all over the place like you do in Utah and Arizona. They call them the Moki marbles. On Mars, they call them the Mars blueberries. Exact same thing. And here in the United Kingdom, these are just the same thing here, only they still have biology left on them. And the moss is eating the biology that's left. And this is just the mud, which is the red flesh, that's the skin. This is very hard for the average mind to stop and think. But the people we're paying to do the research should be scientists, and they have not shown themselves to be that. A scientist should engage and must engage, and an educator must engage, as fiduciary failure is the outcome of that, which is a legal obligation that I think they should get their money back from people that wouldn't do their job correctly, such as, in my opinion, Derek Briggs and Dante Loretta and all those people. They're just not teaching us the truth, which is quite obvious. To me, that's my opinion. You see this? As the earth thaws out, all these balls are the skin of the earth. They're coming to the surface and they're being eaten by moss. You see this? This whole thing was a giant creature's skin. And the fleshy stuff goes away easily, but the balls much tougher, and they are coated with edible material, and plants are eating it, and eventually this will turn into the Moki marbles. But I don't think the earth is going to last that long, to be perfectly honest with you. I see devastation coming, and it's coming pretty damn quick as far as I'm concerned. And that's because, well, there's a lot of becauses, but I'm blaming a lot of well, I'm not going to say any more about that. The earth is in trouble, just let's put it that way. And I showed it. Look at this. I have stuff here. This is a hair follicle. There's where the muscle attaches right there. Shown this hundreds and hundreds of times. There's a sebaceous gland. There's the hair shaft. There's the hair root coming down. Those two dots are the papilla at the bottom. Totally transitioned from nucleophilic transitioning, which means it's been invaded by whatever the matter was here. When that gets boiled and ready to absorb, whatever's there is going to be absorbed. That's why sometimes you get them look like this. They look like meat. The fascia stayed just like the fascia. The meat stayed just like the meat. The connective tissue is just like the connective tissue. Other ones turn to completely mud. They call them mud stone. That's the head of a bone. I think it's a bone that goes like into something like this because it's got a ligament spot. And then sometimes a goose. My good friend Caesar Augustus turned into a mudstone. There's his feathers. You can't miss it. Unmissable. Now, if our educators cannot understand what they see, and they can't come to grips with what they see, they are not true educators. They're not scientists. And this, in my opinion, that's all I have found is non-scientist educators. They just cannot speak because they know they will be destroyed by their peers. And that's what happened. Velikovsky, they made him take a book off the bookshelves. #1 for 12 weeks in a row. And they forced the bookseller to take it off the bookshelves because academia said, we will never buy another book from you. It was Macmillan was the publisher, so they pulled it off the bookshelves. And they treated him with the most disgusting disgrace. And that's the same thing that's happened to me now, too. So I'm just not going to put up with it because I have the evidence to support precisely what Velikovsky said. And the ancient texts. And this is what kills them because all of this wipes them out. It says, no, these people are wrong virtually about everything they've said. And God comes back into the picture big time. And this evolution is just absolute nonsense. And that's what, in my opinion, Derek Briggs turned it into. Yes, this stuff is just like Roger says, only, and of course he doesn't ever use my name. He took credit for all of this. Only slimy things get preserved. Small things up to a meter long, little gooey, slimy petri dish, they said. Totally wrong, and I believe it was done intentionally, that's my opinion, to defraud the students and to defraud us. And then NASA paid Yale to do that paper, which in my opinion was strictly done to defraud. And it wasn't done for scientific purpose. It was done for to get the money. And Derek Briggs, in my opinion, should not be teaching anybody anything. And if Yale puts up with this kind of stuff, which they did, I contacted everybody, yeah, all the way up to the president, and I just did it again today. And it was like it's absolute dismissal of truth, in my opinion. So you make your own opinion. Okay, my friends, get ready. This is NASA. They're talking about the life that they think they might have found on Mars. And he's asking, did we get this right? We're putting it out to all the people that are doing the research. Now, it doesn't have to be universities and so forth. I'm doing the research too. And I have already shown you, or will show you in a minute, what I have to say. But let's listen to what he has to say. Hold on, here goes. I'm just going to let it go.
A year ago, we thought we found what we believe to be signs of microbial life on the Mars surface. And so we put it out to our scientific friends to pressure test it, to analyze it, and go, did we get this right? Do we think this is signs of ancient life on Mars?
All right, let's find out. Pressure test my stuff. All right, let me just start with this. They're talking about this very well could be the clearest sign of life that we've ever found from Mars. Well, I'm showing actual body parts, but they're from giants, but Earth has the same giants. All right, my conclusion here is this is nothing more than one of these membranes. And these these layers in between the fluids that service the membranes, because the membranes are nothing more than a whole ton of fluid-filled little layers. And the top layer right there, that's the one, I believe, that's now they call it interstitium, which is the fluid-filled highway, protects everything below. Can you see that right there, that one right there? And below that is just all membranes. Now, I'm going to show this in a microscope. I got that cooking. But I'll show you, this is basically identical to that. And this is from a very good-sized creature. In us, this would be see-through. It would just be like you wouldn't even know it was there, so thin. And this is what's in between every one of these layers. But these creatures were absolutely stunningly large. Okay, the only real difference is this is stretched here, and these lines are pretty straight. These would be the same thing, only it's squinched together a little bit. So you'll see a little ripply looking effect in this in these membranes here. You see how they're sort of squished together? If they were pulled apart, they'd just be perfectly flat like that. But in this case, it didn't lay out flat. All right, so this is my membrane block that I showed. And these are the layers of the membrane. And this, apparently, to me, this is the fluid-filled stuff, which travels through here. That particular color, to me, represents lymph fluids. I don't know. Now, what is between these layers? Who knows what? And whatever chemistry it was in, when it solidified, determines what you're going to see as the finished product. Now, so that's the one I have in the microscope. And we can see these layers and these layers of connective tissue or fluids that are flowing, open spaces of fluids, fatty stuff, I don't know. But this is what they're talking about here up on Mars. And it's just layering with these fluids in here that, they're right, they contain biology, but it's biology because it was a fluid-filled layer between two layers of connective tissue, which had these little balls in them, which are those anchors. You see all the little balls? Those are the anchors. So this was like layers of skin or something going this way. Something like that. Now you see that one? This one here has a little bit of a tear. And it's, I got to go with a lung. And this is another lung. And that's the alveoli. That right there is the pleura, which is the rubber bag. It's flat as a pancake too, because it was in the Great Flood. Now in my area here, this was what they call a basin. So it was like a boiling pot, and everything boiled and just settled and turned flat on one side. And it depended where it was in the flood, I guess. And what was on top of it, what was under it, that type of thing. Was it next to a heart? Was it next to lungs? You know, it's going to take on the biology of what it was next to after it was completely flushed of its blood and so forth and bodily fluids. In most cases. Sometimes they come out just like they were when the guy died. For some reason, I can't give you all the answers. Sometimes they turn into just mud, still stone, still cartilage attached. Everywhere where the pleura was wrapped. The pleura is like a rubber bag. Well, the pleura on a lung. Fascia on bones and tendons and muscles is fascia. And that's the rubbery, slippery stuff so that you can do all that. And there's almost no resistance at all. So you learn an awful lot from mud fossils. We're going to look at that. I'm going to show you that spot after I put some water on it. But first we'll look at it dry. And then I'll put some water on it and we'll look at it again. And this is what you're going to see is this kind of little pebbly looking stuff in here, because that's the minerals that sort of stabilized with the chemistry of blood. It's called nucleophilic substitution and invasion. Normally they come and they pass stuff off, and then they come back and get recharged. This time they came out and they can't pass anything off, so they stabilize. Same thing's going to happen. I'm going to show you right here. Same stuff. Only that's not wet. Mine will be wet and they'll show up much better than that. Alright, I'm going to have to play with the lighting a little bit so that you can see the nuances here. There's a whole batch of little balls. You see the different colors? And you see these different little squiggly lines and so forth. And the balls here, they may not look apparent. Let me do some shielding and so forth. It's a little hard to control this, but you can see there's this gooey pattern and these little squiggly globs on top of this brown stuff. No, that's that wet shiny spot. It's not wet. It's not wet. And here's right off the edge of it. Alright, and here's the stuff. Hold on. This is basically what they're looking at up on Mars, which is this stuff here. Let me home in a little better if I can. Hold on, let me come up a little better. No, that's pretty close. All right, you see this? That's not wet. That is just what's leaking out of the body. This gooey stuff. And I'm pretty sure that's right where there was an investment of a tube, a major tube of some sort. And this is the kind of stuff that they're seeing up on Mars. Just look at that for a second. All right, look at these. Now, if this was dry as dry could be, it would look just like this down here. And of course, there'd be 2 layers of tendon or muscle fibers, connective tissue, whatever it is. And then you would have this same sort of stuff as we have up there. Now I'm going to put a little moisture on there, and you're going to see that the red stuff will instantaneously turn red. You see it? See how quick that turned red? Look at that. That's what red blood is. It just doesn't dry out. It rehydrates instantaneously. Rehydrate just means it absorbs water. You see that? That's a little tiny red blood vessel. There's layers of tissue now, and this is that organ, whatever it is. Now, here's the spot that I didn't get wet, and it is not wet. It is just shiny because it is biologically active, some kind of a substance. Now I'm going to put my finger on there, and I'm rubbing around. There's nothing. There's no wet there, and it's slick. I mean, it's just smooth. Let's go with smooth. And that is covering up all that same stuff as what was all this stuff over here. This I put water on. That's why it turned red. Now, this, I didn't put any water on. That's just like that. However, I am going to put some water on it right now. Right now. That thing sucked up that water instantaneously. I'm going to come down close. Let's just let it soak up for a second here. You see all those colors? That's body tissue rehydrating. And that was that real serious spot. And here it is right here. That's where the edge of it was. It's crazy stuff, but it's true. So this, I don't see this as some big factor here that they have found this. Now, to look at my stuff, that's what I think would be more important. However, it requires just to look at it, not just dismiss it. And that's the only response I have gotten. So I'm hoping that this will turn a few eyeballs to reality, which we always thought was just hysterical nonsense. It's not. These ancient texts were describing actual events. How bizarre they are, yes. Of that, there is no question whatsoever. But are they true? I believe there is no question about that either. They are true. And the specimens that I have shown show that there were giants here, and they're still here. Well, I mean, the specimens are here. And the one they just came back with from Bennu, that's a heart muscle. It's from a heart. These common 67P is a hip joint smoking off in space, and this new one coming in, if it's smoking off, it's being cooked. What it is, I'm not sure. I have a friend who does some of this stuff. He's got a fancy telescope, And he might be able to see something that we could use to understand what it is. I don't know. I haven't looked into it closely yet. No. This, though, I'm telling you right now, that's connective tissue, just as this is. And this is some kind of slurp that's in between them. Just like the slurp I showed you up on my specimen, which is that specimen right there. And again, this one here, that's another lung. And they all have that little strap down there that hangs, that holds it in the body so it doesn't get lost. Just like the other one, my big one here. Well, this isn't big. This is about human size, a little bigger. And it's got the same strap. You see that running all down there? And it's like a little knob that sticks off of there, which is a strap, which is the same as this strap right here. Whoops. Okay, this is where they are up here in Jezero Crater. And they say that they can see all kinds of things up here. This is nothing more than basement layer of skin tissue of some sort, some layer of tissue, whoops, from up in here or somewhere. And the rest seems to have eroded away. Now Mars was really whacked, so this, whatever was on top of here, was scourged off of that surface. And this looks to me like the basement of skin. If I had to say, I would say, but you should see tons of these little balls if that's the case, and I don't see that. But I can tell you what, that is some kind of, probably the outer layer of skin, maybe. I would go with the outer layer of skin, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. You don't know. We just got to go through all this stuff. But I can tell you what, I know what the other ones are. The Mars Morse code, the Mars blueberries, the Mars crab, that Mars tissue that I showed you, they say millions of years. No. All that stuff is biology, just as this is too. All right, here goes. I'm just going to let it go.
A year ago, we thought we found what we believe to be signs of microbial life on the Mars surface. And so we put it out to our scientific friends to pressure test it, to analyze it, and go, did we get this right? Do we think this is signs of ancient life on Mars? And after a year of review, they've come back and they said, listen, we can't find another explanation. So this very well could be the clearest sign of life that we've ever found on Mars, which is incredibly exciting.
Today, we are really showing you how we're kind of one step closer to answering humanity's one of their most profound questions, and that is, are we truly alone in the universe? So last July, NASA's Perseverance rover found a leopard-spotted rock at Mars. And scientists immediately knew, it was interesting, we hadn't seen anything like that before on Mars. And we talked about it last summer. The moment we found it, we put out the images for everybody to see and everybody to share. And so they've done the analysis on these leopard spots, and we think they are potentially made by some sort of ancient life. It's a signature. It's a sort of leftover sign. It's not life itself. And it certainly could have been from ancient life, and that would have been something that was there billions of years ago. Nothing that's current there. It could certainly, as we say, be made by ancient life. And what that means is we look at everything we know about life on Earth. And this is the kind of signature that we would see that was made by something biological. In this case, it's kind of the equivalent of seeing like leftover fossils, leftovers from a meal, and maybe that meal's been excreted by a microbe, and that's what we're seeing in this sample.
I'll be providing some overall geologic context for the discovery of these leopard spot features. The Perseverance rover landed in Jezero crater in 2021. Jezero was selected because it's in a location amongst the most ancient terrains on Mars, exposing some of the oldest rocks anywhere in the solar system. And these really ancient rocks provide us a window into a period of time that's not particularly well represented on our own planet Earth. But it's a time when life was emergent on Earth and could have been on Mars as well. We can see Bright Angel through the eyes of Perseverance. The rover spent several months exploring this area, ultimately pushing to the edge, the northern edge of the channel, where the Bright Angel formation met the margin unit. And it's here at the contact, this edge of the river valley, that the rover explored a special target called Chayava Falls. In order to really understand what makes this particular outcrop so special, we have to get our noses to the outcrop, or in this case, the rover's arm, up close and personal to take a look at all the details of these rocks.
What you're looking at here is a selfie that Perseverance took of itself in front of the Chayava Falls workspace in the Bright Angel Formation. And what we saw in this rock were these layers of very fine-grained, rusty red mudstone. These textural features told us that something really interesting had happened in these rocks. Some set of chemical reactions occurred. What you can see here is a set of spectra that are called Raman spectra. And there's a lot of information on these graphs, but the key thing to take note of is the fact that what we see in these spectra is something called a G-band, and that's pointed out on the image. The G-band for us is a smoking gun indicator for the presence of organic matter in this mud. Here what you can see is the chemistry of the surface of this rock rendered in three colors, red, green, and blue. And the mixing between colors is telling us something about where elements are present together. And what's exciting about these finds, this sort of combination of mud and organic matter that has reacted to produce these minerals and these textures, is that when we see features like this in sediment on Earth, these minerals are often the byproduct of microbial metabolisms that are consuming organic matter and making these minerals as a result of those reactions. So what we need to do from here is to continue to do additional research in laboratory settings here on Earth, and ultimately bring the sample that we collected from this rock back home to Earth so that we can make the final determination for what process actually gave rise to these fantastic textures.
They're talking about going back up here for $11 billion to bring these samples back to Earth to test them. Now, I have either shown you or I will show you that the biology up there is biology, and it's not just this little balls of stuff that they're looking at here thinking it's just microbial, as I have shown you. Alright, so I'm going to just leave it at this. They are doing the chemistry of what they see on here using spectroscopy to say these are these different minerals and metals, and pretty much the signature of blood, I believe, is what they're looking for. And look at this, how cool this is. Remember I showed you that spot? That's not wet. This is wet. Look at what's happening. It's drying from the inside out. That's kind of shocking. It's drying here around that. I put just as much water on everything, but there's a hole in there. There was I would say that's artery blood. And then again, flat as a pancake. They all died in the Great Flood. And right here in a specific area where I am, it's called Triassic Rock. They think that was something 250 million years ago. No. We need to start looking again at this whole thing. I've shown the evidence, and I think I should be part of this discussion. I've done just as much research as anybody else. I didn't go to Yale or Harvard or have somebody tell me what to say. I am showing evidence of what I have, and I have done the research too, and paid for the tests, and so forth, and really not allowed to speak, to be perfectly honest with you. That's how it is. And that's what happens when you upend what the current thinking is. And they're talking about it now, science under siege. They say, oh, no, people like Roger out here trying to make you crazy because he's saying crazy things. No, I'm saying look at the evidence. Look at the evidence. Then go your own way. I don't care. But don't look at the evidence. All you're doing is being led and paying to have somebody lead you astray. And when I say astray, I mean in a lot of ways. And it's been going on for 10 years. Not right. And it's abusive, basically. And it's a fiduciary failure by the academic arena, which are fiduciaries. They're supposed to be looking out for the interests of the students, which is to teach them the truth. They go there for the truth. I would think. And if they're not doing that, they're not doing their fiduciary duty. And what is the remedy for that? I don't know. I'm going to just leave it at that. They know the chemical signatures of life, yes. I agree with that. But they just they can't open their eyes big enough to see the life that's in front of their face.